All right, and let me share my screen. And present mode. And is it one? Yes, it is on the dot. Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Michael. I work here at the Field Museum in Chicago, and I'm joined here by Joshua Anderson, Jacob Schuler, and Karen Knowles. Josh works at Chicago History, and Karen and Jacob also work here at the Field Museum. And we're going to talk a little bit about redefining and optimizing our frontline teams, more so talking about what we've done for both of our institutions, and then possibly discussing what we can all do to further develop our teams in the near future. So again, my name is Michael Padilla. I work here at the Field Museum where we service about 1.1 million visitors a year. I am a team leader for the department. I have oversight of the switchboard, our interns and contractors, administrative project, and the ticketing system lead. And I've been here for about 11 years. I was a project lead for the staff's work at home during our second closure, which was late November to late January. And I'm also a co-coordinator for the museum's DEAI efforts.
Hi, I'm Joshua Anderson at the Chicago History Museum, also in Chicago, about 2 miles away from the Field Museum. I've been here for about 11 years in the Visitor Services Department the whole time, and we have a kind of a smaller staff, about 10 people total in the whole department, and kind of the day-to-day manager of the operation, do the scheduling, training, and event and membership sales. Also, I do tours for the museum, or have in the past, not recently. And I've been a volunteer exhibitions preparator here. We produce most of our own exhibits in-house. And also we put down like a Chicago hot dog festival, so a lot of event production.
Hello, I'm Karen Knowles, and I'm the Membership and Visitor Service Operations Manager. Been with the museum a little over 15 years. In that time, my focus is membership sales, training of the staff, recruitment, and retention. It's a pleasure to be here with colleagues.
And I'm Jacob Schuler, also at the Field Museum. I am not presently at the Field Museum. I'm in upstate New York, where until about a minute ago, the internet didn't exist. So if my quality is terrible, that's why. But I started at the museum a little over 8 years ago as a frontline representative. And at this point, I'm the manager of visitor services and analytics. So while I play a part in the operations, I also have a shared focus in our attendance data. And even prior to the pandemic, something that we've really tried to work with our team on is kind of closing the circle in our data. You know, our staff members are the ones that input all of these transactions. And so we want to make a very clear line of communication between inputting that data, getting that data back out, and understanding how that impacts and makes clear our visitor analytics.
All right, so changing the way we think, what does a visitor services department do when visitors are no longer allowed in the building and the rest of the institution shifts their work to offsite? In this session, we're going to discuss the strategies for keeping our visitor services staff involved in the museum operations and productive in work from home environment.
So we closed. I think we knew a couple days in advance that it was coming. And while we were first closed, not knowing how long it'd be, we just made a point to go, instead of a 7-day-a-week operation, just to Monday to Friday. We'd have daily morning meetings with the staff. We had a very flexible schedule. We had just switched to All True for ticketing, and this gave us a fantastic opportunity to spend about half the day every day just going through more training for All True. And the big project that we took on at the beginning was all of the bad records that we had from our previous ticketing systems. We finally had time to just have people go through them and make all the corrections that were needed. And then we also, as virtual programs started coming up, as a group decided on a couple programs a week that we join to see what other museums were doing. That's it for us.
Okay, well, in the membership department, we closed on that Friday, took the weekend off, and got back right back at it on the Monday. We had developed a little membership outreach campaign. You know, when we're open, there was never really enough of us, enough time in the day to reach out to our members and just call them, ask them about their visit. So this was a fine time for us to just not asking or soliciting for renewal or donations, but call them, let them know that we have frozen our membership so you're not losing any time during the closure of the museum. And very important, we were able to clean up data, make sure we had accurate emails for our members, and just let them know that we were developing, working on a lot of virtual programming. And if we had their accurate email, that we would send them out membership newsletters and things like that. So it was a great success, Sweetheart membership for that. I added here a few of the comment emails that came during that outreach program. I've had nice communication from the Field Museum. I'm impressed that someone both called and emailed recently. I have appreciated the regular updates and featured stories that you've been sending. Thanks for reaching out, Malika. Yes, we have been getting the email updates and reading all the fun info. Thanks so much for putting these out so we can enjoy the Field Museum's content, even though we have to be apart. So it was a resounding success for outreach to our members. Now, again, we were working on data cleanup, getting rid of old emails and all of that. We also participated in membership Mondays webinars and different webinars like that were being held right at the beginning of the closure. Towards the end of November, in actual May, it was May 20th, we decided to start to reach out to our members who would be in renewal and go ahead and solicit for renewal or donations. So we started calling on May 20th and you know, that was new, a little more challenging, asking for money, and the team was really getting into it. Unfortunately, that following Monday was on the 25th. Of course, we all know the George Floyd incident that happened, and we just suspended calls, of course, because how sensitive everything was at the time. So before we could pick the program back up, furloughs occurred in our area.
Yeah, so at the point that the museum first closed, March 13th was our last day of operations in 2020. Visitor services and membership at the Field Museum were actually two separate departments. And, you know, to be quite honest, you know, we had a pretty large team in visitor services. We were about 40, a little more than 40 total, 6 managers and a few in between frontline and management as well. And so to say that we were able to brilliantly pivot to meaningful work right away wouldn't necessarily be true. With such a large team, a lot of our work just became about managing expectations for so many of our staff members. You know, in hindsight, we know we ended up being closed for about 4 months. We reopened in the middle of July, so about 4 months later. But at the time that we closed, we originally thought it was going to be 2 weeks, and then suddenly 2 weeks becomes a month, becomes a little bit longer. And, you know, as leaders, as managers, I think that we're used to leading from a place of information, in a way, from a place of privilege. And we didn't really have that privilege at the beginning of the pandemic. We were all operating off of the same understanding of the world around us, which was changing every single day. And so a lot of our work just became about checking in with our teams. So every 2 weeks, we would check in with our staff and just get to know, you know, how they're doing, how they're coping, what their expectations for returning to work were, which very early on were the same as ours. We just didn't know. As managers, we continue to meet a little bit more frequently, trying to piece together some of what we heard from the staff, trying to piece together information that we had from the news, from the executive teams, from other leaders around the building as well. And we were able to keep the full team together until around late May is when, as Karen had mentioned, furloughs in the museum began to happen. And so about mid-June, we ended up furloughing the majority of our frontline team, laying off only a few of the part-time staff members. But at that point, you know, again, as I had said, leadership traditionally had come from this place of information, but I think it was this very interesting shift towards transparency, which I don't know is something that really was very prevalent in a lot of institutions prior to COVID, but I think it's something that's becoming more and more important, not just because of COVID, but also because of things that Karen had talked about as well with civil unrest in the city. Transparency has become something very, very, I think, important in the work that we've been doing. And so by the time we got to furloughs and layoffs, the staff, you know, everybody was pretty familiar with what was happening at that point, and we were all kind of operating from those expectations together. At the same time, I mean, the work of the broader museum did shift pretty quickly towards reopening. I think once it was clear that those 2 weeks, it was going to be longer than 2 weeks before we came back into the building, a few key members of the museum got together, put together a broader reopening committee. And again, at this point, we didn't, you know, we were still confused about how COVID was spreading, how much, thought do we need to put into, you know, tactile experiences and touch and things like that. So not knowing at what point the museum would open, trying to think about what that would look like. And from that main committee, we set up several offshoots, a ticketing committee, a signage committee, health and safety, one for visitors, one for staff, trying to piece together what we thought, reopening would look like when that did come about. And a part of that, one of the things that seemed quite natural to fold into that reopening plan was the merger of membership and visitor services. So Karen's area and our area as well. It's something that actually the museum had been talking about for years. It just never seemed like quite the right time to pull that trigger. But we, about a month and a half, I think, before we actually reopened, we started to integrate our two areas, which I believe we'll talk about a little bit on the next slide. Yes, so as we prepared to reopen, again, late July, I think July 17th is the first day that we reopened to members. Two of our main and quick projects became implementing a new ticketing system, as well as figuring out what our merged operations looked like. And to start with the second bullet point, those merged operations, you know, it always made sense from the visitor's perspective. We knew that if somebody walks up to an admissions desk, you see a membership employee, you see a visitor services employee. From the visitor's point of view, those people are doing very, very similar work. And we've always, you know, collaborated very closely, especially on the public floor, on the front line, but piecing together what that looked like behind the scenes and how, you know, budgeting priorities and things like this became a lot of the work that even as we reopened July 17th, we were still figuring that out. And I think that's a clear distinction that you'll see between our first closure and reopening and our second, is that so much of this was still uncharted territory that we were figuring out as we went along. When we reopened with really just our management team of 8. And then I think it was 5 frontline employees who were able to join us. So everybody just sort of had their hands on the public floor, figuring out what sanitation looked like, at the register, switching between posts, things like that, as well as, you know, piecing together some of this bigger philosophical work that we had to do, piecing our departments together. And then another huge wrench in another challenge that we were working with was a new ticketing system. Much like Josh had said that they implemented a new ticketing system, I believe, right before the closure. We were beginning that work. We knew that we needed a new ticketing system prior to our closure. When the museum closed, we assumed that that was something that was going to be tabled for a little bit later on. But what we found out as we got closer to our reopening date is that the company we had been working with previously probably wasn't going to be able to support us for the specific needs that we had upon reopening, implementing things like timed ticketing, online tickets, a lot of different things that we had to put into place. That system wasn't going to be able to work for us. So we ended up implementing our new ticketing system, Acme, in in 3 weeks instead of the 3 months that we had originally hoped to implement a system, which was pretty audacious, I think, to begin with. And so that's another example of something that we really figured out as we were implementing it. Again, the bulk of the frontline team at that point was us managers. And so we were able to kind of learn as we went on the public floor. That is what I have to say.
Yes, so with our reopening, same thing. Even though we had pretty extensive training on the new ticketing system, we primarily focused on what was our weak point previously, which was all the data entry and knowing how to not make mistakes that affect the other departments. The one thing we didn't focus on quite as much as we should have was on the actual POS system and selling tickets. And additionally, we were suddenly, talking through a barrier and staying, as far apart from each other as possible, which, just to explain for anyone almost everyone that hasn't been to our museum, we have kind of a little ticket desk, and we suddenly couldn't rely on having a friend come over and pointing something out, or none of that anymore. So that was a huge issue, and has still continued to affect our membership sales, because we're having difficulty with long conversations about people's family history. So that's our workstation changes. And then we had gotten great at providing customer service for our all virtual programs while we were closed. And suddenly the virtual program schedule was keeping pace with our requirements in the building. So we were kind of constantly paying attention to what was going on online, while also trying to pay attention to making sure people were wearing masks. But it's slowly worked itself out.
All right, so a few months go by, and now we are looking and seeing that there is a possibility for a second closure. So for both institutions, we had about a day or two prior knowledge that we're going to close again. So with that, we started preparing plans for what we can do with our teams to utilize them and work with the institution and get their buy-in to let us work with our frontline teams more regularly while they are at home, instead of just letting them sit at home. This way we could actually develop them personally and professionally. So the work begins, and we developed a base plan. We start to think of, again, the second closure and what we can do to keep them more engaged, specifically our frontline team. At this time, it was a team of 9 frontline representatives that we would have to account for, and then along with the managers. So we set up a similar model to like a college course that allowed their work days to be sectioned off into 1.5-hour time slots. And the managers will sign up for these time slots to actually work with the frontline staff in different projects that they are expertise in, or different personal development courses, or sign them up for a webinar or something like that. So we really use this opportunity to also challenge our managers to develop themselves as a leader, to guide our staff through this time, to really get them through these different projects. So week 1, we did an extended weekend because that was Thanksgiving weekend. First full week allowed for us to do a first full week of closure. So you'll see the screenshots off to the right. And we split the team up into 2 and really started to put those sessions into play. We use Google Calendar to manage all of this. Google was really helpful during this time. And we recorded all of our Zoom sessions for all of the sessions that the staff attended, to make sure that they can go back and have the opportunity to look back and relearn anything that they might need, which is still a useful tool that they use today. So a few courses that we did were Excel and Google Sheets. So this more so went into formulas and design. A lot of our staff members did not have the opportunity to learn this either growing up or in school. A lot of them have been with us for quite some time, so they didn't have the skill set to use Excel and Google Sheets, so it was always learning on a job. But now we really use this time to actually sit down and teach them how to use Excel and Google Sheets, and more so, how is it that we use it to better develop our work on the management side. We also did secondary language practice with Duolingo, which was a very fun activity for them that they got to challenge each other to keep on building their points and really saw how to communicate better with their visitors when they did return. We had various presentations from exhibitions to come in and really display the work that they have done that the Frontline team may have not known about because they're smaller exhibitions. We continued on with the Membership Monday webinars, got involved in some Learning Center initiatives. Our advancement directors did some fundraising 101. And then we've had a few other departments come in and present their work to the team and how their work affects our work and affects the institutional work. We got into botany digitization, and we actually challenged our frontline staff to develop a presentation themselves on what we do in our area, because of course, all visitor services departments do so much, and we really use this time to educate other departments on what we do and what we're accounted for. And we've had a few diversity webinars as well.
Yeah, so we took a week off when we closed, and then the first thing we thought to do was go back to the data cleanup. That, after not too long, was obviously going to be a grueling, unending task. So we decided to split it up. We had a few people that were doing fantastically at it, but others had some difficulty, with connectivity, making meetings. So we found other things for people to do. And one thing that I would mention about kind of the way we approached it was there's always been in the Visitor Services Department at the History Museum, the opportunity to intern or volunteer or do some paid work in other departments pretty regularly, because we have a relatively small staff. So a member of our staff team went to do photography metadata, and we went into more customer service and virtual programming schedule, and then just back at training, because we were so worried, especially after how long the first closure was, that we were going to lose the skills that we'd had. And we did manage, I should mention, to keep all of our staff employed the whole time. So we wanted everyone to be ready when they came back. Then we also had kind of informal lunch meetings with other department heads and just other staff pretty regularly.
All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about staff reactions, because of course, on the management side, we worked from home the first time, and we were prepared to do it again because we all have our set assignments that we do have to complete, so that can be done from home. But for the staff on our end here at the museum, that was a little bit different. So both institutions identified, staff that were either super enthusiastic or a little bit afraid from this new model, because again, the museum's closing, they're so operation-based, they don't know what to expect in this second round. So we just asked them, what were you feeling when you were told that we're closing again? What is something that was challenging, something you enjoyed work-wise, and then a skill or knowledge that you can still use today?
So some highlights from our experience, and there are two people that I've mentioned here, our two full-time staff members, Sonara Victor, who was already working in another department and really getting into the data side of our work, and Jessica Bandera, who is still cleaning up records and making sure all of our new records are up to snuff. But we had James, who started a month before we closed, and we had just trained him on the old ticketing system, and it explained that he was going to need to learn the new one. But he came in with a lot of collections experience and had worked at the Art Institute of Chicago prior to working with us. And he moved out of town for most of the time we were closed, and was having a lot of difficulty being able to communicate during our regular meetings. But he did have a stable connection and a huge knowledge of Chicago history and photography. So when we were looking for something for him to work on, it was very easy to get him on. Our research and access department had just launched a new images site and needed people to be going in there and creating the metadata. And James kept working on this well into our eventual reopening, and only stopped relatively recently. And when we've got the opportunity for it to come up, hopefully in a happier time, he'll probably go back to it. And we had Roberto, who was also writing his dissertation at the same time. And, he was taking care of family members and kind of all over the place during the day, but could give us 2 uninterrupted days, and also was ready to get out of his apartment. So he and I actually worked in the museum assisting the exhibitions department, and Roberto had already been a sculptor, and we had a fantastic time, and he got to join into our regular Teams meetings from the workshop, which is one of the pictures he took while he was ripping apart an old exhibit. And also, working on the exhibits did give him a fantastic insight when we were talking to visitors about the exhibit he'd been working on. Fantastic sign of getting to help build something. And then we had Rob, who has actually worked at the museum longer than I have. Had a lot of difficulty with connectivity and was also taking care of his family. He also wanted to get into the museum, and we had a ton of empty offices, and we've been approached a number of times. It's worth mentioning that while the Field Museum merged the departments during the pandemic, we actually were part of the membership department a few years ago, and had since been asked a few times about making phone calls. There was never really time for our small team, but now there was, and Rob really stepped up and suddenly has become this fantastic salesperson. So much so that when a full-time job came up, a number of people told us this is the way you gotta go. So Rob's now a full-time staff member, and he's way more engaged than he ever was.
All right, and then here at the Field Museum, we have Stanley, who's been with us for 6 years, feeling a little bit skeptical, of course, about the unknown, uneasy during the time of not knowing if he had to use his vacation times again, or if he was going to be furloughed once again. So, but he enjoyed, working with the botany curator in the digitization project of our specimens and working through Zoom with his coworkers. And he learned a lot about the digitization and Excel sheets, and he continues to work through those. So he's been really enjoying that. We have Ella here, who's been with us for about 16 years. She didn't know much of what to think when we were closing again. Challenging piece for her was how to understand to identify the specimens that she was digitizing and identifying them properly. But she did enjoy, her own meals at the leisure of her house. But she did not use Excel before, and it's actually now a part of her everyday projects and ticket data cleanup and membership tracking that Ella is using Excel with us. So she's been really great at helping us out lately. Mariah, who was here with us for about a year, when she was told about, working from home, she was slightly relieved because it gave her the satisfaction that she wasn't being furloughed again, and the museum had cared about the staff itself. So a challenge during the time was computer and Wi-Fi malfunctions, hoping that things wouldn't go out for too long. And one of her favorite things was being able to connect with the different departments. And some of the things that helped her in her current role was a data entry and language learning to assist her with various visitors. Sorry, while I turn my light back on. And then Latrice, who has been with us for 20 years, was afraid of the near future and felt challenged by sitting in front of a computer, Latrice is one of our team members who is very operation based, who has been in and out of the operations for so long that, this was a completely new thing for her. But she did enjoy it. She was able to take some time away and experience with learning how to use Google Slides and PowerPoint. And she really excelled her knowledge, from doing this for so long into presenting that to her museum community. A little bit during the second part, we advanced our development plans. So we started making some phone calls for membership. And again, as we've been mentioning, started helping our collections team with digitizing their collections, which has been a big project for the museum for so long. So it allowed us to actually step in and assist.
Thanks, Michael. After the merger of the two departments, as Mike was saying, we did want to start renewal calls. The challenge was that, of course, we all had to learn the new ticketing system. And then we had to get our new friends and visitor service up to speed on the scripting and just how to go about making the calls from home, as well as the membership side of things. They were really focused on learning the different posts inside the building that they had never done before. So during the calling that we did there, we were able to, I want to say it was a success. So we only did about 30 renewals during the time, which is about 18 days of calling, because of course, remember, we were only calling 2 days a week, and the rest of the week they were doing professional development, training, digitization work. So it was only about 18 days, but again, lots of outreach, lots of positive interactions with our members. We continued our data cleanup, ensuring that we had active emails for our members, and they were very pleased with it. We continued to receive emails and letters. One I listed here. I've had such nice communication from the Field Museum. I'm impressed that someone both called and emailed recently. I have appreciated the regular updates and feature stories that you've been sending. So all in all, the second round where we were closed of calls, we can be a great success with over 3,000 plus member households contacted.
All right, and then we were challenged to partner with our collections team, and we were able to partner with the botany curator and work on the botanical specimen digitization project. So Matt Van Conrad, who's the head of botanical collections, has been such a great partner over the last year, because the work continues that we allow our team to continue to work. And during that time specifically, we dedicated 100 hours of work time for everyone to work on this. So about 5 staff members every day will be working on digitizing the specimens, which saved the museum a salary range of roughly around $16,000, which is a part-time collections assistant for a year, just about. And we have translated data records for over 3,000 specimens and counting so far. Here are a few appraisals that we've done from leadership, because this was an unexpected partnership. So our former senior director was able to bring this all together and thanked Matt for his investment into our team, which resulted in, of course, a true testament that collaboration is possible with 2 totally separate departments here at the museum. Deborah Beckham, who is our director of the Family Collections Center, was impressed with the achievement that we've done in such a little time, and thrilled to see, colleagues from around the museum stepping in to really help the collections team as well. And then Thorsten Lumps, who is the Vice President of Science and Education, congratulated everyone, of course, for the amazing achievement. And then our President and CEO, Julian Siggers, even announced it to the museum community as a whole that we were working on this project during the time. So, he appraised the visitor services staff for helping with the collections data while the museum was closed. And then Science and Education committed to returning the favor when guests were able to come back into the building again, which was actually just last week. We've had several colleagues from our Science and Education team come by during customer service week. If you all don't know, last week was customer service week, so happy late customer service week. But we usually challenge our museum community, and we've seen an increase from science and education that they actually did come down to the floor and help our staff out at their specific posts and learning what they do with cashiering, with wayfinding, sitting at the information desk, and at the exhibitions itself. So very successful partnership that we were able to develop and continue over the past year. So the visitor experience moving forward, our teams were able to, again, to step outside their comfort zone and help with the collections and get a really good look at what it's like to be a back office worker. So again, botany digitation continues to be one of our projects here, especially as our attendance is not exactly where we want it to be. Of course, that's probably at any institution, but it's rising, and we still have the opportunity to continue these conversations with our botany team. Membership calls continue to happen as well for our lapsed members. With this time with a message about our building centennial, we've been at our lakefront home since 1921, so 100 years here. 6 different team members have developed presentations for member-focused mornings, and multiple team members now work with management on data cleanup in Excel. And one of our next steps in that process is actually teaching and working with them to analyze these data trends that we're pulling from our ticketing system.
Yeah. You know, we were able to take the skills that people already had and apply them to helping the rest of the museum when it was needed. But you know, now we're back to being here every day, welcoming the visitors. We've been open since March now. And we were getting kind of slow, but we've had 2 exhibit openings since, and we're kind of back at not quite our full attendance. The metadata project isn't currently going, but it's something that can come up again. And we are going to be doing member calls, I think on a quarterly basis now. And we're going to switch it out so that it's more people on the staff doing it, so that we all have, you know, fantastic sales skills, especially because people are starting to come in again. We are still challenged, oddly, because we're in the building and a lot of the staff isn't. And I'm sure it's happened to everyone. There's a bunch of people that work for our institution that we've never really met in person, because a lot of people are still primarily working from home. But we're going to start doing regular virtual meetings again, and getting that staff to come meet our team and try to open it up again so that we all feel comfortable with each other and can, you know, share ideas. A lot of really cool things have come out of visitor services in the past, and we forget that our voice on programs is often really helpful, especially as the people producing them are regularly not interacting with the visitors anymore.
All right. So like many institutions, there has been a founder respect and appreciation and concern for the frontline workers, being that, of course, frontline workers are the only ones in the museum to operate it, especially during this continuous pandemic that we've been all through for about a year and a half now. For the Field Museum, the appreciation has been shown through evolving engagement from back of the house staff when they're sitting in Zoom meetings, and they come down, provide tours to our frontline staff, you know, taking them behind the scenes to the collections areas. Simple conversations have been going a long way now that we are being able to communicate a lot more, and showing that the communication between front of the house and back of the house is important, and ensuring that the frontline staff are, of course, still being accounted for through those meetings, even though a lot of them are not able to attend those meetings because we have a museum to operate. And most recently, the engagement again came from Customer Service Week and allowing everyone to come down and work the front lines with us, which has been getting a praise from leadership and front of the house, loving how we've had a lot more engagement from back of the house staff members. But that pretty much wraps it up for the presentation part about it. here goes our emails and our names. If you would like to contact any of us, feel free to do so with that. But let's discuss, has anyone else been able to do the same type of model, working with your staff members during a second closure or even during the first closure if you're able to do it? But now, what are our teams doing to really start to develop our frontline staff more to actually, work with different areas or even just advance and making sure that, the institution itself knows that the visitor services department is one of the primary departments, both to operate, but also to give challenging thoughts to when thinking about decision making for the museums.
Hi, Mike. We do have one question in the chat. It's from Wendy. How is your attendance tracking compared to the last year when you were regularly open, percentage-wise?
I can answer that for the field.
Okay.
So yeah, when we reopened in 2020, of course, again, we had no idea what that was going to look like. And when we first reopened that July and August, it was a very, very slow summer. I think we started at around 95% down versus 2019, our last regular year. And slowly each month we were getting a little bit closer. And by October, we were about 75% down. So again, very slowly chipping away. And then again, we hit our second closure in November. So that progress that we had sort of made, we lost. When we reopened again in January of 2021, we backtracked a little bit. And I think we started at around like 85% softness versus 2019. But 2021 has been an entirely different game for us. And again, we created this personal and professional development program when we were closed with the expectation we're going to reopen again. Attendance is going to continue to be soft. We'll need to rely on these projects to fill time and to make a case for the work that we do. Attendance just skyrocketed by the time we got to the traditional spring break season. It was very, very clear that we were heading back to, close to normal attendance. And especially as we started to sort of chip away at the different attendance segments. So we knew we weren't welcoming school groups into the building. That's typically 130 something thousand visitors per year. So when you look at every piece individually, certain parts, our members were 20% of our attendance. So members had come back really, really strongly, I think, thanks to a lot of like the calls that we were doing. And when we took away a lot of the other, partner programs like City Pass and Go Kart. If you all have these partner programs that, you get admission to several attractions, those were a little bit slower to grow back than our general core attendance, because those are visitors that have to buy into like a bigger trip to multiple institutions. But our general public attendance in the last few months has actually been higher than our 2019 numbers. Our overall attendance, I think, kind of peaked in July, and we were only 9% down for our total attendance versus 2019 numbers. So, that hasn't necessarily been consistent. August and September slowed down a little bit, I think partially because of the Delta variant, but, partially because people are just getting back into their normal grooves, getting ready to go back to school and things like that. So it's definitely not consistent, but it's getting a lot closer to where we were in 2019.
Great, thank you. Kristen had a question. She said she's impressed by your professional development courses. How did this work with the part-time staff and their availability to attend the hour-and-a-half sessions?
Yeah, so I think that's something we missed, is that all of our staff, when they started to come back to the museum, all of our staff positions are full-time. So we made sure that that was just working with full-time staff members. Would have been a little bit different for part-time, but yeah, everyone is full-time. I seen Aline has a question about how did we get buy-in from our leaders in the creation of the staff engagement opportunities. So we had the 1 to 2 day notice that we knew that we were going to be closing again. So we met and started identifying managers' strengths and what managers could work on team members with, because we have 8 managers that are all, strengthful in so many different areas. So we use that to the ability, and we relied on our 2 lead cashiers at the time as well to work a lot with accessibility and secondary language as well. So we challenged them with that and helping us, lead sessions on that, and then managers, really focus on their strong spots. So whether it was presentations, writing, Excel, or bringing people together to meet with the team, we were able to get that in there. But also again, with the membership calls, we were able to, you know, say we'll help out with membership calls, take the lead on that, and that shows that we're still bringing in revenue during the time that we're closed. And then, you know, even further, it was a week or two after we've started that botany came into the picture, and we were able to show even a stronger standpoint that what would have took botany hiring so many different collections assistants to translate all of this data, we were able to do while we were on the payroll still.
I think also something that I think we said a lot during that time was it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. So one of the things, again, we had, you know, 2 days of lead time. We just threw something on the calendar. We started doing it and basically said, all right, you know, this is the plan that we have. We've already started. You tell us when to stop if you want us to. Otherwise, we're just going to keep going. And I think, you know, it speaks to something that I think a lot of us have recognized during this time is like, nobody knows what's happening in this pandemic, especially early on. And so, I mean, any strong voice is a voice that somebody will listen to. And I think that not just, you know, our management team, but so many of our, you know, representatives on the floor as well have been able to find that strength in their voice. And I think, you know, through the work that we've done here, a lot more people throughout the institution are really listening to what our team has to say.
Great, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions?
Did anyone else have like a similar approach for what they worked on with their team, or, you know, been able to really develop their teams now that we've had this opportunity during a slower time?
We did something similar at the Grammy Museum and engaged our frontline staff with the different departments. We did something, this is actually something we did prior to the pandemic, where 4 hours per week, they would actually get out of their uniforms, go in regular clothes, and spend time with another department working directly with them. Just because a big priority for me and my guest service staff is to make sure that they see a path for themselves and a way to develop into the company. And, you know, sometimes just having to wear your uniform to go to a meeting can already kind of create a barrier between you and your other coworkers. So it was a time for them to go and learn about the different departments and really kind of figure out where they see themselves growing in the organization. Since we've come back, you know, it's been a little bit harder because, of course, our team is a little bit smaller and we're still struggling with the attendance at this point. I'd say, you know, we're in Los Angeles, and so we were able to reopen in May of 2021. So we were closed for a good long time, from March of 2020. So we opened in May, and, you know, we initially saw, I'd say, probably 50 to 60% of our attendance come back from 2019. But September, I'll be honest, September was really rough. We're hoping October will pick up. But because of that, we've really had to kind of really hone in on the hours, and it's been mostly guest services. So I'm looking forward to our attendance picking up and us being able to start this program again, because it was something that our team really loved doing.
That's really cool. I wish we had the ability to have people work in other departments on a really regular basis. That's awesome.
We have time for about one more question if anybody has anything or a story to share. No? Going once?
All right, well, thank you, everyone. Again, feel free to contact us. You can email us. You know, Bex has our emails, or you could find us on LinkedIn or anything, and we'll be happy to connect. And of course, we're always looking forward to connecting with other institutions, bouncing ideas off of each other. So always feel free to reach out. And if you ever come to Chicago, just let us know.
And I'm going to drop